You might have wondered, do aliens exist? The Anunnaki reptilian alien theory reasons the dualistic nature of humans and the presence of alien life among us. The two big alien theories. There are two groups of theories regarding ancient aliens: Anunnaki theories, reptilian theories. Both types of theories claim the human race did not evolve through Darwinian processes but had extraterrestrial origins. And both types of theories claim our real history was like the movie series Stargate, with extraterrestrials guiding the development of our society, sharing their technology with us and playing the role of gods. The difference between them. The Anunnaki and reptilian theories differ on who these gods were. The reptilians are thought to resemble the lizard people from the TV series We, except they never bothered to disguise themselves as humans. The Anunnaki are thought to be more human-looking, except that they were 12 to 15 feet tall, twice as tall as the tall man. Those who subscribe to the reptilian theory believe the Anunnaki were reptilians. The reptilian theory and human race. The main difference between the reptilian and Anunnaki theories is where they say the human race came from. The reptilian theory posits that humans originated in the Lyran star system, that they had a war with the reptilians millennia ago, and that they came to Earth as refugees from that war. But the reptilians followed them to Earth and the war continued here. Ultimately, the war climaxed on an exchange of nuclear weapons. Many scholars believe the biblical account of the destruction of the Sodom and Gomorrah is based on a real historical account of how those cities were destroyed by nuclear fire. The war finally came to an end when the reptilians and the Lyran humans agreed that neither species would rule the Earth. The Earth would instead be ruled by a hybrid of both species. So reptilian genes and human genes were spliced together to create the hybrid, and thus the modern humans. The Anunnaki theory and the human race. The Anunnaki theory tells a different story. The Anunnaki came to Earth to mine for minerals, primarily gold, on which most of their technology was based, and which was in short supply on their home planet Nibiru. Nibiru passes close to Earth every 36,000 years. The rest of the time its highly elliptical orbit carries it well outside our solar system. It was during one of these 36,000 years flybys the Anunnaki came to a few thousand years. The Anunnaki came to Earth to mine for gold, but the mining was hard work, and after a few thousand years the Anunnaki got tired of it and started to look for a convenient source of slave labor. Their solution was to take the most highly evolved primate species on the Earth at the time and graft their own genes onto it. The result was the first humans who resembled the Anunnaki, because they were created in God's image, as the Bible says. Some scholars believe the original text of the Bible says humans were created in the God's image, meaning God's plural, which would be more historically accurate given there were many Anunnaki. Over time, the Anunnaki interbred with the creations so that they came to resemble Anunnaki more and more, and the apes they had evolved from less and less. When the Bible says there are giants in the earth in those days, it is referring to Anunnaki and their offspring. Aliens and the Noah's Ark. The Anunnaki became divided into two factions, those that wanted to share their technology with humans and those that wanted to keep it to themselves. For Anunnaki theorists, the nuclear war that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah was between those offspring Anunnaki factions. Soon after this war, Nibiru was due to pass close to Earth again, which could have devastating effects for anyone left on Earth's surface. The anti-human Anunnaki faction led by Enlil wanted to save only themselves and leave the humans to die, but the pro-human faction led by Enki thought the humans should be saved. Enki gave Noah instructions to build an ark in which he and his family could survive the coming flood. As Nibiru passed by the Earth, its gravity caused one of the polar ice caps to slide off and fall into the ocean, causing a flood so massive that every civilization that existed at the time now has a flood myth. Why did the Anunnaki leave us? For a few years or decades after this, the Anunnaki returned to Earth and helped the humans rebuild, but they didn't linger long because they wanted to go home to Nibiru before its highly elliptical orbit carried it out of our solar system. The Anunnaki left and humans bred with one another. The Anunnaki genes became diluted and our race became shorter in stature. For Anunnaki pursuits, the story ends there. The evidences of a genetically modified human civilization. The smoking gun that we are a genetically engineered species is the staggering number of genetic defects we have. Whenever you genetically engineer an organism, you create genetic defects. Naturally occurring organisms have very few genetic defects. Humans have over 4,000 and we are finding new ones every year. We have far more genetic defects than any other species on the planet. Darwin himself said that we have all the end marks of a domesticated animal. Domesticated animals such as cattle, poultry and pets are riddled with genetic defects because humans have selectively bred them for hundreds of generations to get them in their current forms. Chimpanzees and humans. Also, there is only one chromosome of the difference between us and chimpanzees. We have one less chromosome than they do, because chimpanzee chromosome 2 and 3 have been fused together in us. There is no natural process that can cause chromosome to fuse in this way, but it is a common practice in genetic engineering. Human brain size. Equally compelling evidence of genetic manipulation comes in the form of a sudden increase in our brain size, which evolution cannot account for. Take a look at the final 3 steps in the currently accepted human evolutionary tree. Homo sapiens 200,000 YBP, brain size 1450 cm3. Homo heidelbergensis 600,000 YBP. Homo heidelbergensis 600,000 YBP, brain size 1348 cm3. Homo habilis 2,500,000 YBP, brain size 700 cm3. YBP denotes years before present. From this chart, we can see that the brain size of our ancestors nearly doubled from Homo habilis to Homo heidelbergensis, but this increase of 648 cm3 took 1.9 million years. Compared to that, the most recent increase of 1 or 2 cm3 in just 400,000 years is a massive evolutionary leap. That is simply impossible according to Darwin's theory. Human race after the Great Flood. In the wake of the flood, human civilization developed very rapidly, far more rapidly than it could have without outside help. The established archaeological view is that the state of human civilization before the flood was that of primitive hunter-gatherers, ignorant of agriculture and incapable of any architectural feats bigger than wigwams and bivouacs. Yet Egypt and Mesopotamia had miraculously developed mathematics, architecture, astronomy, law, philosophy, and medicine a few centuries later, with no visible forerunners. Other stories about origin of human civilization, any apparently independent cultural stories about the origin of civilization, including the Sumerians, Egyptians, and Hindus, report that basic scientific principles and whole fields of knowledge came from non-human sources. These stories of technical assistance often attribute the basic concepts for civil institutions and social standards to ETs. This goes against our natural tendency as human beings to claim credit for any new idea that we come up with. Wonders ancient alien technology. All over the world, monuments built of massive blocks of stone, fitted together so precisely that you can't fit a cigarette paper in between them, suggest a global civilization that built cataclysm-proof structures. What suggests an ET influence is that we could not build such monuments today, even with modern technology. For example, the Prime Meridian building is supposedly to be perfectly oriented north, south, east, and west, but it is 9/60 of a degree of true north, compared to just 3/60 of a degree of true north for a Great Pyramid. Then there is a huge complex of temples at Baalbek. The platform of these temples contain 5 million cubic feet of stone blocks, most of them weighing hundreds of tons, all of them perfectly square with perfectly smooth sides, and all of them fit together so precisely you couldn't fit a human hair between them. 3 of these stones, the trilithons, weigh more than 1,000 tons each, heavier than the biggest crane we have today can lift. Again, suggesting an ET agency at work is the remarkable similarity between these monuments, appealing all over the world at the same time. There is a common influence that touched all these places long before recorded history began, a remote third-party civilization unidentified by historians that had a presence in Mexico, a presence in South America, a presence in Egypt, and elsewhere, and left behind a legacy of knowledge in all of these places. Ancient alien technologies we used. At the end of the last ice age, the Chippewas Manabushu, Noah-like personage, received instructions from an Abe on how to make a good bow and arrow and how to work with copper. In Old Mexico, Zana, who is believed to have led the ancestors of the Aztecs to Yucatan, was considered to be the author of civilization and the source of their alphabet. The Algonquins consider a being named Glooskap, who did feats too amazing for a man to have done, to be their cultural founder. The Mayans' ancestors reportedly received advanced ideas from Kukulkan, who arrived from the West and helped found a new culture. Quetzalcoatl, credited with having taught the Toltecs many important areas of knowledge, was deemed to have made the greatest contribution to the founding of their culture, including setting ceremonial calendars and religious practices. Then there are many hieroglyphs and petroglyphs created by the ancient Egyptians, Sumerians, and Mesopotamians, depicting such things as planes, helicopters, space rockets, and satellites thousands of years before we invented them. Technologies that were depicted as being gifts from the gods. So, are ancient aliens real? It's a yes from me. I believe the Anunnaki and the Reptilians were two distinct races and both played a significant role in shaping human history development. The majority of researchers believe the Anunnaki were the gods, and I lean towards this view myself, but I am not 100% convinced it wasn't the Reptilians. The problem is that the evidence and the historical records that survive from those times are fragmentary and can be interpreted in many different ways, like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that can fit together in many combinations to form many different pictures. But I am not an Anunnaki purist. I believe our true history is likely some hybrid of the Anunnaki and Reptilian theories, just as our species is a hybrid of Anunnaki and Reptilian DNA. I believe that after the Anunnaki created us, through genetic engineering and interbreeding, the Reptilians tampered with our DNA further to make us more like them. That is why we now have a reptilian brain and mammalian brain encased in our skulls. It is the conflict between these two brains that creates our dualistic nature. We get our spiritual creative side from the Anunnaki heritage and the savage destructive side from the reptilian heritage.
If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Feel free to write a comment below and suggest which theory you want to see next. If you'd like to further support this channel, please consider joining. Our membership link will be found in the description box below. We appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for watching.